I dared to enter the deadliest cave on earth, but what I found lurking inside was unbelievable. I never should have opened that door. The cold seeped out like a shiver creeping down my spine. The darkness pushed in, swallowing everything. I was supposed to be out hiking, enjoying the fresh air, not standing at the mouth of this ominous cave. My heart raced. How could I resist? Stories of lost souls and hidden treasures twisted in my mind, fueling my curiosity. Inside, the air felt thick, almost like a damp blanket clinging to my skin. The smell? Musty, like old earth and forgotten memories. My footsteps echoed, a haunting rhythm in the stillness. Shadows danced on the walls, so alive, it sent chills cascading through me. I brushed against the walls, textured like the skin of a tired old man. Then, I heard a faint whisper, like a voice from far away, drawing me deeper. I paused. Was it real? Or just my imagination playing tricks in the dark? I moved forward, fueled by a mix of dread and exhilaration. The whispers grew louder, almost begging me to join them. My chest tightened, fear gnawing at my resolve. My hands trembled. Suddenly, an object shifted nearby. A rock, maybe. I turned sharply. Nothing. Just the shadows and the waiting dark. The further I ventured, the more the atmosphere thickened, like fog wrapping around my mind. I could hear my own breath, rapid and shallow, amplified in the quiet. Another rustle. I swung around, nerves fraying. My heart hammered. Was it an animal? Or something worse? I caught a glimpse of movement in the corner of my eye, a shadow flitting between stalagmites. My pulse raced. I should turn back. But the pull of the cave was overwhelming. Then the whispers crescendoed into a cacophony. Bodies pressed close, unseen faces, their breath on my neck. The chill turned to icy, a primal dread that settled in my bones. I fought the urge to scream, to flee. Just as I turned to escape, a figure emerged from the darkness, its eyes glowing. Everything went black. Hey, before we continue with this amazing story, I need to give you an important heads up. Many subscribers have reported that YouTube unsubscribed them without warning. Take a quick second to check the red button below to make sure you're still subscribed to the channel. I'd hate for you to miss any of the exclusive content coming soon. And while you're there, smash that like button, it really helps me out with the algorithm. Oh, and tell me in the comments, which city are you watching from? I love getting to know every amazing person who's part of this community. Your participation makes all the difference. Let's connect. I woke with a start, my pulse pounding in my ears as the darkness pressed heavily against me. I wasn't in the cave anymore, but I still felt its presence, lurking just beyond the veil of my consciousness. I blinked, the outlines of the cavern's mouth flickering before my eyes like a haunting mirage. The muted gray of dawn seeped in through the gaps in the cave entrance, illuminating the ground strewn with jagged stones and damp earth. Yet, the air was thick with something sinister, a lingering echo of the whispers that had drawn me in. My pulse quickened, and every instinct screamed at me to flee. As I turned to escape, a shadow darted past the periphery of my vision. I froze, feeling my throat tighten, a silent scream lodged there. Is anybody there? My voice cracked, a thin thread against the oppressive silence. It felt futile, like calling into a void that wouldn't answer. A cold gust swept past me, chilling my skin and setting the fine hairs on my arms on end. A low whisper coiled around my mind. Stay play. I stumbled backward, glancing frantically over my shoulder at the yawning cave mouth. I could almost hear it sighing in anticipation, beckoning me back into its depths. My heart sank deeper when I realized that the shadows were not merely absent sources of light, they were alive, shifting and swirling as if they were sentient beings, watching, waiting. That I turned abruptly and fell to the ground, slamming my palms against the cold, damp earth. Panic surged hot inside me, but the cave had become a cage, trapping me in its embrace. Crawling on my hands and knees, I felt the texture of the stone beneath. Mesomething squirmed beneath the surface, slick and repulsive, trying to pull me back that I fought to regain my composure, and as I stood shakily, I caught sight of something glinting in the low light. I approached cautiously, the urge to run battling against my morbid curiosity. It was a small, ornate locket, blackened with age yet intricately carved. Just as I grasped it, the whispers returned, now an anguished choir, crying in despair, "Release us!" I stared at the locket, my heart pounding a terrifying rhythm as I opened it, revealing an old, faded photograph. It was a family, their faces smeared with some unknown horror, eyes wide and mouths open in silent screams. I could almost hear them wailing through time. The chill in the air thickened, and an overwhelming sense of dread sank deep into my bones. I couldn't shake the feeling that I was now part of their story, trapped between the living and the dead. Suddenly, the ground beneath me trembled violently, and I stumbled back. The cave shook, stone and dirt falling like rain around me. "You must join us," the whispers taunted, now more corporeal, as if rising from the very ground. My feet moved without my consent, stumbling forward, drawn again into the darkness. I grasped at the locket, feeling its pull as I teetered on the brink of the encroaching shadows. Then it happened. From the depths of the cave emerged an unfathomable figure, a grotesque melding of human and shadow, eyes burning with a seething hunger. A piercing shriek cut through the air, sending waves of terror crashing over me. In that moment, I realized it was too late to turn back. I was entangled in a web woven from despair and ancient hauntings. The figure lunged toward me, outstretched arms reaching with an insatiable Kravinga voice pressing deep into my mind, a final command: "Become one of us." And with that, the darkness engulfed me once more, drowning my screams in its eerie embrace, leaving me at the threshold of something unimaginably terrible. The weight of the void consumed me, slipping through my fingers like quicksand. As I was drawn into the suffocating blackness, my mind reeled, teetering on the edge of reason. With each heartbeat, bitter despair wrapped its choking tendrils around my throat, squeezing tighter as the terrifying visage before me morphed into terrifying faces, fractured reflections of the photograph in the locket. Shapes flickered at the corner of my vision, whispering secrets in a language lost to time. They beckoned me onward, their mouths moving soundlessly, as if rehearsing the ancient tales of suffering swallowed by the cave. Somewhere within that inky abyss, a soft glow pulsed, beckoning like a heartbeat waiting to be met. Drawing a shuddering breath, I fought against the growing compulsion to answer their call. My mind struggled against the thick, dragging pull of the shadows, ranging from the fierce anguish of those trapped inside to a deep sorrow, a hunger that felt maddeningly familiar. A sense of urgency thrummed beneath my skin, urging me to break free from this terrifying embrace. They needed something from me. I turned to retrace my steps, but found the path I had taken disappeared, consumed by a writhing wall of shadow that coalesced into grotesque shapes. My heart raced as despair clawed at my chest. The shadows grinned, twisting in delight at my rising panic, and I heard their pleas morph into taunts. "You will never leave, you will never escape." Suddenly, the ground jolted beneath my feet as if in protest. The walls of the cave undulated, alive with a pulsing energy. I staggered backward and collided with something warm and slick. Panic surged anew as I felt cool fingers brush against my back, gripping me tightly. I whipped around to confront another figure, a face reminiscent of my own, twisted in agony, mirrored in the darkness behind it. My breath caught, and for a fleeting moment, I felt the pull of familiarity. This was no stranger, this was meanly twisted and tortured, bearing scars of fear that ran deeper than skin. "Join us," it rasped, its voice a symphony of sorrow lined with malevolent glee. "Embrace the darkness. Live forever with us." A memory flickered through my mind, unbidden and jagged, me childhood friend disappearing into the darkness of a cave, her last scream echoing in my ears. I had thought it a tragedy all these years, but now I understood. She hadn't been taken, she had chosen. The blood of the living swelled within me, a sacrifice required for some twisted resurrection. "No!" I shrieked, my voice rising above the cacophony. I pressed my hands to my ears, attempting to drown out the chorus of voices urging me to belong. But in this nightmare, the ground quaked violently in response to my defiance, and I fell to my knees, propelled by an invisible force into an open maw of shadow. The moment I looked up, I saw its shimmering figure of a woman standing just beyond the threshold of the cave. Her eyes were luminous, filled with stars and blood, silently pleading. Her form twisted and contorted like smoke, emanating a sense of loss that made my heart crack. I recognized her, trapped within the cave's embrace, an echo of the life I could have led. Help me! I cried, reaching for her. The shadows drew closer, edging in on me, hissing. The woman's expression turned desperate as she faded, pulling her arms inward as if she could resist the darkness. Do not let them take you. She implored, but her warning was drowned beneath the howling wind. Before I could respond, the shadows lunged forward, and a deafening roar erupted from the cavern, drowning out all coherent thought. I felt the crushing weight of despair enveloping me, and in the maelstrom of panic, my grip on the locket slipped free. It landed with a soft thud in the damp earth, the lid swinging open. A blinding light erupted, tearing through the shadows around me, fracturing their grip as I fought to stand. At that moment, a piercing shriek echoed throughout the cave, that same haunting cry of the long-lost family captured in the locket. Realization pounded like thunder in my skull. The souls within the cave were not simply trapped, they were feeding on the experiences of those drawn unwittingly into their web, waiting for a vessel to manifest outside of its hidden realms. Before I could fully grasp the horror of what I'd uncovered, the shadows recoiled, clouding the luminescence of the locket. I could see the darkness swirling, forming the head of a monstrous creature, eyes swirling galaxies of despair and venomous intent. You cannot resist, it boomed, the very ground trembling beneath its voice. Join them. That terrifying chorus surged around me again, voices pleading for release, commanding me to become part of their eternal suffering. But what they didn't anticipate was the deep, burgeoning rage that surged within me, a fire ignited by fear, loss, and desperation. In that moment, I realized I no longer fought the shadows for my own freedom, but to protect the lives left unwritten, and to confront the terror that demanded my spirit. I lunged for the locket once more, ready to embrace the inevitable, yet the air shifted, and I was swept off my feet, dragged backward into a deeper darkness as the ground beneath me gave way, swallowing me alive. With a heart-wrenching chill that bit into my soul, I felt the lingering taste of lost promises, and as I plummeted into the unknown, a terrible thought ignited a shred of hope fought against the consuming darkness. I might be able to save them all, or doom myself forever. But I had to know. The truth awaited in the depths below, and the shadows would not let me go without unveiling their ghastly secrets. As I plummeted deeper into the abyss, a sickening warmth wrapped around me, as if the shadows beneath had conspired to embrace me with their twisted affection. My breath echoed in the void, a small sound swallowed by the suffocating darkness. Just when I thought I'd become one with the night, a wall of cold, damp air met me, halting my fall unexpectedly. I landed on a floor slick with something viscous and alive, the ground pulsing beneath me as though it had a heartbeat of its own. The air was thick with an all-encompassing terror, wrapping around my throat and squeezing. My skin prickled, aware of the unseen eyes that watched, biding their time, hungry and waiting for a chance to devour me. My heart raced, a drumbeat in the silence, and I struggled to focus, scanning my surroundings for any glimmers of hope. It was then that I noticed the walls, slick and wet, etched with ghastly visions of agony in grotesque detail, figures writhing, faces frozen in screams, caught in an eternal struggle with the void. Their mouths opened wide, though their cries were swallowed by the cavern's embrace. My grip tightened around the locket, feeling its warmth pulse with every tortured ligament of a soul etched onto the walls. Help us. The voices surged, a mixture of urgent plea and haunting echo that reverberated in my mind. Though they begged, it felt like an invitation to join an insidious dance of despair rather than a call for salvation. The shadows stirred again, pooling in the corners of the cave, merging to form distinct shapes, figures draped in tattered fabrics that seemed to flicker in and out of existence. They hovered just beyond reach, their mouths moving in sync with my heart, their whispers luring me closer into their treacherous embrace. Find us. They chorused, their voices eerie in unison, grappling with my instincts. A primal fear ripped through me. I stumbled back, instinct urging me to distance myself from their malevolent charm. Yet the figures shimmered with familiarity, their forms reminding me of the photographs I had once cherished, loved ones lost to time, faces I had mourned. With every second spent in their ghostly presence, the urge to turn and run was overshadowed by a disturbing fascination. What had happened here? What kind of unspeakable horrors had they endured? Driven by desperation, I snatched the locket and clenched it tight against my chest. I needed answers. I needed to uncover the truth buried deep, even if that truth meant traversing the dark maze of lost souls. Shadows flickered forward, voices rising to a frantic crescendo, "Let us show you." Without warning, the ground bucked beneath me as the shadows erupted, consuming the space with a frantic energy. I fell to one knee as the phantom forms surrounded me, whispering their tragic tales, each thread of despair weaving a tapestry of memories that felt achingly familiar. As their stories unfolded, colors danced on the dark canvas of the cave, igniting brief glimpses of their Levisa mother's smile, a child's laughter. The unyielding love faded into unbearable loss. Yet within those aching memories, darkness entwined with light, revealing a sinister truth. Each soul bore a part of my own heartache, linked through the pain of choices made long before their descent into this living tomb. "What do you want?" I gasped, fighting against the crushing weight of their sorrow. "Find the keeper," a voice rasped, echoing through the chamber as if ushering me into the depths of despair. "Break the curse before it consumes you." In an instant, the myriad of souls converged, wrapping around me in a cyclone of ghostly lamentation, pulling me toward an opening that glowed ominously ahead. Within it, I could sense a pulsating heart, each pulse resonating in harmony with the cries of the forsaken. I knew without a sliver of doubt that the keeper would hold answers, perhaps even a way out, or salvation. But at what cost? Each tendril of shadow that brushed against me clung heavier, slick and unrelenting, as if warning me of the price of knowledge and the darkness that awaited within. My instincts screamed to escape, yet hope clawed at my insides, urging me to forge boldly forward. The air thickened as I moved closer to the radiant opening, a horrible amalgamation of dread and determination enveloping my senses. Just as the light began to pierce my consciousness, a sharp pain slashed through my side. A twisted figure, my own reflection etched in malevolence, burst from the shadows, snarling in violent rage. "You will not escape!" It screamed, a visceral hatred boiling to the surface. White-hot pain radiated through me as its claws grazed my skin, forcing me back violently. Through its pained expression, I glimpsed the reflection of my own horror and anger turned against meth, embodiment of my deepest fears and regrets. Time warped around me, but I couldn't let that figure remind me of what I'd lost. With the locket's glow flickering like a fading star and the creature closing in, I tapped into the memory of the woman from beyond the cave. "I will not be yours!" I shouted, defiance surging anew, but the culmination of shadows surged back, gathering strength for a final push, their whispers peeling layer upon layer from the edges of my resolve as if attempting to unravel my very being. I took a step forward, ready to embrace whatever lay ahead, but it was too late. The keeper's anguished wail echoed from the depths of the churning darkness, calling me forth into the void. From within, the ground cracked open, and an inky tendril lashed out, coiling around my ankle, dragging me down into unending darkness. As I screamed, the cacophony of souls blended with my voice, a terrifying symphony of despair that chilled me to the core. And in that moment, I understood the truth I had sought. It wasn't merely about breaking the curse. It was about confronting the darkness that existed within every choice I'd ever made. With a deafening roar, the shadows pulled me under, and just as I began to slip away, a single sparkling light flickered in the depths, an ember of forgiveness. And then there was silence, the enveloping dark swallowing my thoughts whole. But a breath within me still lingered, yearning to discover if the keeper still awaited. What other horrors would erupt from the shadows? What would I become in this living nightmare? With that chilling sense of anticipation, I plunged headfirst into the unfathomable depths of the cave, knowing the horror had only just begun. The silence that engulfed me was deafening, more oppressive than the encroaching shadows that swallowed my surroundings whole. I drifted, suspended in nothingness, my thoughts racing through the labyrinth of my mind while my body felt weightless, as if it had lost all connection to the world above. Had I truly been pulled into the abyss, or was I simply trapped in my own distorted perceptions? The darkness whispered, curling around me like chilling fog, its rhythmic pulse synchronizing with the rapid beating of my heart. It enveloped me gently, seductively, teasing the edges of my sanity with fading echoes of voices I couldn't discern if they were alive or long since buried. The cries of the damned, their misery woven with threads of familiarity, tugged at my consciousness, and I felt the skin on my arms rise in response to their siren song. Then came the flickers, tiny sparks of light in the distance, wavering like forgotten stars in an ancient sky. Each flicker ignited something within me, a flicker of hope against the crushing despair. As I drifted toward them, drawn by an invisible force, the lights began to coalesce into flickering forms, indistinct yet achingly human. Faces emerged in the dim glow, shifting in and out of view, some comforting, others twisted with torment. "Join us," they whispered, voices like wind chimes in a storm, sweetly inviting yet laced with malice. At the forefront of the shimmering figures stood the woman from my memories. Her features, once a soothing balm in my nightmarish reality, now bore a haunted expression, her mouth a silent plea as she extended her hand. I reached out instinctively, but the moment our fingers were about to touch, the ground beneath me groaned ominously. The very cavern seemed alive, shifting and twisting with pulsating violence. I stumbled, feeling the weight of despair sharpening in the air around my grip tightening around my throat. The ground trembled violently, crumbling beneath the weight of forgotten secrets, and the radiant forms flickered more chaotically, their faces morphing into features I barely recognized. "What do you want?" I shouted into the maelstrom of light and shadow, hands balling into fists. "What have you done?" The whirlpool of lights vanished in an instant, replaced by a nightmarish cacophony, a chorus of wailing, laughter, and screams blending into a horrific symphony. It echoed through the cavern, reverberating off walls slick with despair, a melody that made my skin crawl. Before I could process my anguish, the cavern walls rapidly morphed, revealing fragments of my past, the smiles of loved ones, the warmth of shared evenings fading into bitter memories, the anguish of loss carved deeply into the marrow of my bones. Each image was accompanied by a dull ache, a tormenting reminder of my failures. As the dreadful realization crept into my mind, I found myself in a familiar living room, one I hadn't stepped foot in since her funeral. Instantaneously, I stood there, surrounded by shadows of the past that once filled the space with laughter and warmth. Yet now there was only a chilling emptiness. Confronted, the shadows echoed around me, the broken whispers forming a single voice that felt like climbing through the dark. "You cannot outrun your choices." Terror gripped my heart as the shadows merged, coagulating into a grotesque display of regrets and grief. The peaceful visage of my lost loved ones transformed into shrieking horrors, mouths wide with accusations. "You abandoned us," they shrieked in unison, voices merging into a high-pitched wail that sent tremors down my spine. "No, no." I gasped, trying to drown out their sorrowful lament. "I tried to save you," I thought, but the words fell hollow, lost amidst the echoes of remorse. Panic ignited as the shadows sharpened into intimidating figures, dark specters that took on the form of my failure as me hesitations, the moments of hesitation that had cost me so dearly. A creature, like the twisted reflection of myself from the depths, emerged from the mist, its eyes devoid of light but flickering with an insatiable hunger. "Prepare to face the keeper," it hissed, voice raspy, like the dry crunch of autumn leaves underfoot. As it edged closer, the darkness swirled ominously, and I felt the void beckoning. Suddenly, a sharp shudder tore through the cavern, splitting the air with a crackling energy that sent shockwaves rippling outward. The ground beneath me fractured, and without any warning, the shadowy figures lunged. As they surged toward me, their arms extended like grasping claws, panic propelled me outward that I barely caught a glimpse of a familiar glint in the shifting shadows, the locket, pulsing with a light that felt both warm and fragmented. In chaotic desperation, I dove toward it, the darkness closing in behind me like a ravenous beast. But before I could reach my salvation, the tendrils of shadow swept through, ensnaring my limbs. A piercing scream tore from my throat, echoed angrily by the wraiths around me. The cavern erupted a deafening roar as though the very being of the cave was rebelling against the spirits of the tormented, and in that moment, I understood that I was at the brink, not just of some earthly fate, but of my very soul. The keeper loomed just beyond the pool of light I sought, an unformed mass of shifting darkness, encased in an aura that made my heart race. The shadows bathed it in distortion, and I could taste the bile rising in my throat, an instinctive horror warning me against taking another step, but the whispers rolled like a thunderous tide. "Bring it to an end," they echoed. "Only you can change it." With the shadowy beings pulling me away, I felt the world crumbling beneath my feet. But I couldn't give in. With every ounce of strength left, I lunged toward the light, determined to uncover whatever horrors awaited within the keeper's grasp, desperate for whatever truth lay in wait, and as I closed the distance, the cavern roared anew, the ground quaking as shrieks of the lost swallowed me whole. I could feel the keeper's essence swelling, ready to devour, and then, just as I thought I could grasp the light, it flickered, dimming into an unsettling darkness all around me. Then, a flash of realization struck a wretched truth that rendered me breathless. I wasn't simply seeking the keeper. In my desperate resolve, I had awakened something else entirely, and from the depths of that consuming black, something more sinister than despair began to stir. A sensation twisted around my heart, a realization that laid bare the darkest corners of my psyche I may have already been lost. In that terrifying moment, beneath the dark veil of impending doom, I felt a presence and ancient malice rising as the shadows whispered its name, and it was coming for me. The whispers crawled into my mind like venom, each syllable splintering my sanity further as the air thickened with dread. I was no longer just a traveler in an unending void, I had become prey, hunted by the echoes of my own despair. The malevolent presence thrummed in the darkness, a rhythmic pulse that matched the pounding of my heart, a sinister heartbeat hidden in the shadows. As I stumbled deeper into the suffocating blackness, the cavern walls pulsated with a life of their own, a grotesque mimicry of flesh undulating around me. Here, time felt twisted, as though moments stretched into eternity and each second lengthened into agony. The remnants of light I had chased flickered with cruel mischief, teasing me like the fragmentary memories of those I couldn't save, bright, momentary, and forever out of reach. I extended my hands, trembling, trying to grasp at phantoms woven from my past, but they slipped through my fingers like smoke. Do you feel it? The whisper returned, more insistent now, a cold breath on the back of my neck. The keeper knows your heart. It knows your regrets, your losses. The air grew heavier, each word wrapping tighter around me until I could barely breathe. My surroundings morphed into a kaleidoscope of anguish, nightmarish silhouettes shifting in the corners of my vision. I caught glimpses of them, spectral forms with faces of anguish that mirrored my own despair, their hollow eyes wide with someone else's unhappiness. "The keeper will show you everything." Then came the laugh, terror-chilling chorus that seemed to circle me, mocking my plight. I turned sharply, heart racing, only to find myself in yet another place of torment, a shattered version of the kitchen where I had once cooked with her. The walls wept shadows that dripped like blood, pooling around my feet, and the oppressive air weighed me down. Everything here was wrong. The stove, once gleaming and warm, stood cold and rusted, every utensil twisted grotesquely like testaments to my failures. I stepped forward, desperate to relive the memories that once brought me solace, but the very essence of the space dwindled, consumed by despair. A gaping void yawned before me, its depth stretching infinitely into blackness, and from it came the stench of decay mingled with betrayal. "Run," a voice hissed, barely above a whisper, but pressing against my mind like a mallet against glass. "You must run, but run where?" The cavern was a labyrinth with no exit. Every turn led me deeper into its maw, every shadow whispering secrets of despair, begging to be understood but sealing me within dread. And just as I thought of surrendering, a terrible roar erupted from the darkness, an unearthly sound that felt less like a cry and more like an abomination in anguish. My pulse quickened as the air crackled with an energy I could almost taste. The shadows thickened, swirling like storm clouds around a mountain peak, crashing against one another in a frenzy. The keeper was no longer a distant figure. It was here, in all its grotesque glory, and it was awakening that I stumbled backward, breathless, as the wailing intensified, a dissonant choir that crescendoed into pure chaos. From the heart of the shadows, a figure emerged, a faceless void cloaked in swirling darkness, taking on a formless shape, a malevolent force that drew from my worst fears. It surged forward, and the air thrummed with darkness, threatening to consume my very existence. Then I saw it, the locket I had once sought glimmered between the ripples of shadow, nestled within the yawning abyss. Its light beckoned, a fragile hope flickering dangerously against the tides of horror. Desperation surged anew within me. I had to unlock its truth, had to harness the fading glimmer of warmth before the void claimed me, but the closer I moved toward it, the more the keeper's shapeless mass shifted, coiling around me with an insatiable thirst that felt both lost and longing. "You cannot turn back," it whispered, voice steeped in both seduction and dread. "Your past is entwined with mine forever." As it lurched forward, the shadows swirling like a tempest, I sprinted toward the light, my heart pounding like war drums in my chest. Every instinct screamed at me to flee, to escape the dread that followed close behind, but the locket was my only guide through this nightmarish descent, and then, with a cacophony that echoed through my bones, the ground beneath me cracked open, the swirling shadows erupting with agonized cries of those trapped within. I felt myself teetering on the edge, the sheer drop into the abyss pulling at my very soul, while tendrils reached for me with claws that clung to regret and despair. In a reckless surge of adrenaline, I leapt for the light, feeling the icy fingers of darkness brushing against my skin, grasping, pulling me back toward oblivion. The locket shone brighter than all the shadows conspired, illuminating my path, yet the pit of despair beckoned with a gluttonous hunger, inviting, insistent. Just as I clenched the locket in my fist, the keeper's voice rose above the din, deep and mocking, reverberating through the chasm with a terrifying finality. "Welcome home, lost one. We shall discover just how deep your darkness really goes." And with that, the very fabric of reality splintered, a deafening crack that shook the cavern to its core, spiraling everything into nothingness, leaving me suspended in a void where the choice was no longer mine to make. Something ancient stirred beneath the depths, a force that had been waiting hungry and aware, and as the shadows twisted and lunged at me once more, I understood that I was not alone, or had my horror begun. With the locket clutched tightly in my hand, I hung suspended in the void, the remnants of light swirling around me like moths toward a flame. Time lost meaning, and the echoes of my past raged into melancholic howls, tormenting my mind. I was enveloped in a deep, suffocating silence, an absence of sound that thrummed with the promise of calamity. My heartbeat thudded against the oppressive stillness, and the shadows writhed, whispering secrets long buried beneath the earth. The darkness was not merely a lack of light, it was sentient, a living fabric woven from the fears and regrets of countless souls consumed. I could feel their anguish tightening around me, clawing at the fragments of hope I still possessed. Then, without warning, the ground roared back to life, and I was plummeting into an endless descent, darkness enclosing me like a shroud. I landed hard, the impact jarring my thoughts, sending ripples of pain coursing through my body. When I opened my eyes, the surroundings had transformed again. I crouched in a dimly lit chamber, its walls slick with moisture, the air thick with the scent of mildew, and something far worse, something fetid creeping into my nostrils, reminiscent of rotting flesh. My heart raced as I struggled to regain my bearings. The walls glinted with shards of what appeared to be bone, each piece a haunting reminder of lives extinguished in this abyss. A lantern flickered to life in the far corner, casting a sickly yellow glow that struggled against the oppressive shadows. As I scuttled toward it, images danced against the wall, visions of a family fractured by grief, children whose laughter had been reduced to haunting echoes. I recoiled, pressing my hands against my ears to block out the cacophony of silence interspersed with ghostly cries, and the realization struck me like a lightning bolt: these were the souls the keeper had absorbed. In a frenzied panic, I turned to escape, but the chamber twisted grotesquely, morphing to keep me entrapped in its hidden designs. The laughter resumed, a sound that crawled beneath my skin, relentless and maddening. My eyes darted about the chamber, landing on a massive mural painted in dark, stained Huesa likeness of the keeper, swirling and grotesque, its myriad eyes glinting viciously, watching my every move. A tremor reverberated beneath my feet, and the ground quaked as a deep, guttural laughter echoed through the cave. "You cannot run from your sins," it jeered, an omnipresent force that seemed to inch closer, wrapping around my throat like a vice. "You are far from free, and your past calls you. Are you ready to confront it?" Panic thrummed through me, urging me to act, to flee before the darkness made good on its promises. I turned and dashed through the chamber, navigating the crevices, desperately seeking an exit. Horrific scenes flashed before my eyes as I ran, visions of confrontations gone awry, harsh words lingering in the air like smoke, faces of those I had abandoned, haunting and wailing within the caverns that I in the distance, I spotted a door carved into the wall, outlined in a soft luminescent glow. I raced toward it, urging my legs to move faster, but the shadows surged forward, stretching long and dark, seeking to ensnare me within their clutches. "Stay with us," they hissed, voices dripping with the essence of my failures. Just as I neared the door, I felt the cold fingers of the darkness close around my ankle, dragging me back, pulling me toward the remnants of my past that gnawed into my very spirit. I screamed, desperation fueling my strength as I clawed at the ground, attempting to escape the smothering grasp. "Face us, face the truth." The keeper roared above the clamor, its voice resonating through the chamber with inescapable authority. With one final push, I broke free, lunging toward the glowing door as the shadows clawed at my back. I had to know what lay beyond. I could not become another lost soul deep within this accursed cave. My fingertips grazed the edge of the threshold when a blinding scream erupted from the darkness, ripping through my senses, a sound of pure agony that seemed to freeze time around me. Just as I crossed the threshold, the door slammed shut with a force that rattled the very foundation of the cave, sending shockwaves throughout the hidden labyrinth, and in that blinding moment of clarity, I realized what had been waiting for me. The glow behind me darkened, the echoes of whispers overlapping into a thunderous roar. I stood alone, but not for long. What emerged from the darkness was not merely a continuation of my twisted past, but a nightmarish figure, a reflection of something I had long concealed, what I feared most. And as it surged toward me, the chilling words flooded my mind: "You cannot escape who you truly are." It bore the face of those I had loved and lost, a twisted amalgamation echoing my grief, enveloping me in sorrow, and the cavern itself began to heave, primal waves of rage and despair clawing at the very essence of reality. With terror flaring inside me, the realization hit: this was not merely a cave, it was a trial by fire of my own regrets, and there would be no escape unless I learned to face them. But as the shadows descended upon me, threatening to snuff out the last flickers of light, I understood perhaps the keeper had crafted this labyrinth as my reckoning. As the figure lunged, mouth agape, a piercing cry escaped my lips, and just then, the ground shattered beneath me, leading into deeper, unfathomable darkness, dragging me into a realm beyond the horrors of the known. Wherever I landed, I knew one thing: I was about to confront the most terrifying truth of all. The void around me choked off the air, an all-consuming darkness that swallowed sound and light alike as I tumbled deeper into the recesses of the cave. It felt as if I were falling endlessly, spiraling through nothingness, the weight of despair pressing down on me from all sides. Panic surged in my chest, striking like lightning, as I braced for a shattering collision. But instead of a hard stop, I was met with silence as I landed softly on a floor that felt almost alive beneath me, shifting and pulsating as if breathing. That I sat up, bewildered, and eventually stood, shrouded by a dim phosphorescent glow that emanated from the walls. Instead of stone, the cavern was clothed in something organic and fleshy, a living skin scarred with jagged cracks that released wisps of fog, curling away like the last breaths of the lost. The air was thick with decay, and the deep, primal stench of damp earth mingled with something sweet and coppery. I could feel the vibrations of 1,000 whispers pulsating through the ground, as if secrets were trapped in the very essence of this sinister place. Fearing what lay ahead, I hesitantly ventured forth, my feet squelching on the slick surface, echoing strange squelching noises that filled the void. Each step sent shivers racing up my spine, and I strained to listen, searching for any indication of life or something worse. The walls seemed to ripple and undulate, reflecting the tension of my heart, and I felt my resolve harden as I pressed deeper, the glow brightening to reveal grotesque images embedded in the flesh of the cavern. Figures twisted in torment, their faces frozen in silent screams, clawed at the walls as if trying to break free from an eternal prison. I recognized some of the features. They looked like faces from my past, familiar yet distorted, enriching an agonizing truth. Were these shadows remnants of those who had come before me, drawn into this abyss of grief? Or were they manifestations created from my own guilt? My thoughts thrashed violently as I stumbled upon a wider chamber, an eerie cathedral stretching out before me, its ceiling lost in darkness. At the far end, amid creeping shadows, stood an altar woven from bone and skin, adorned with offerings of torn fabric and shattered glass. It thrummed with a sick, pulsating energy that filled me with dread. Against my will, I felt drawn toward it, a magnetic pull that obscured my thoughts. As I stepped closer, the whispers crescendoed into shrill wails, echoing my name in a haunting chorus. "You cannot escape, you cannot hide," they cried, and as I reached for the altar, I was met with a blinding flash of light. Suddenly, I was not alone. The air thickened, coalescing into shadows that appeared as hooded figures surrounding me, their features hidden beneath a veil of despair. Their mouths moved in sync with the haunting chorus, embodying the darkness that had seeped into every corner of my mind. "Join us," one of them rasped, its voice a hoarse whisper mingled with the sound of rustling leaves. "You belong with us, the Keeper guides." "What? No!" I screamed, backing away. But the crowd surged forward, their intangible hands reaching out, their icy grasp tracing my skin like 1,000 pinpricks. Each touch ignited buried memories, moments of guilt and despair, the faces of those I failed, the tattered remnants of my soul laid bare for judgment. That I fought against the tide, wanting to scream, to flee, but the pulling grip of their presence paralyzed me. "Embrace your flaws, embrace the truth," they chanted, the words echoing in my mind, drowning my senses. Then, in a surge of clarity, I recalled the locket clasped in my palm. It shimmered faintly, a tether to the lives I had once cherished. Instinctively, I pressed it against my heart, its familiar weight reminding me of hope nestled in grief. As the light radiated from within, the shadows recoiled, writhing as if threatened. "No!" they shrieked in unison, and the chamber erupted with a cacophony of tortured voices. They seemed to undulate, merging into one vast, teeming mass of sorrow. The altar quaked beneath me, threatening to erupt, and as the ground trembled, a rift opened, a gaping maw of churning ether, pulling at everything around it. The shadows desperately clawed at my shirt, my arms, each grasp a tightening reminder of my guilt. "No!" I shouted, backing away from the altar, raising the locket high as though it were a weapon. I could see flickering images dancing within, brief flashes of warmth and laughter. Was there a way to harness it? But before I could act, the ground split wider, revealing a glistening abyss beneath that beckoned with the whispers of unfortunate souls, a gateway where dreams went to die. A shriek erupted from my lips as I lost my footing, tumbling, spiraling into the unknown. I plunged into a kaleidoscope of memories, blinding light swirled around me, blurring reason. They enveloped me in warmth, yet the chill of the darkness clawed at my back, desperate to pull me back into its grasp. As I bore down into the depths, the faces of my loved ones materialized around me, hovering just out of reach, pleading, warning me, their voices a cacophony drowning out the Keeper's laughter that echoed from the void. And just before the very fabric of reality faded into insufferable darkness, I heard a voice deep and dreadful that laid bare the unthinkable truth: "You must make a choice. Choose wisely, or you shall be lost forever." In that last flash before the shadows reclaimed me, I felt a shard of clarity. Perhaps this was not merely about haunting memory as it was about uncovering the hidden strength to confront the Keeper. But was I brave enough, or was I destined to eternally wander within the sorrow of this cave, forever at odds with my past? The answer fled as I fell into a black pit where no light could pierce, and in that unending void, I screamed in horror. What awaited me behind the darkness was more terrifying than anything I had ever known. The darkness clung to me like a wet shroud as I plummeted deeper into the abyss, each second stretching into an eternish, a cruel trick of time that blurred the lines between memory and reality. The roar of wind enveloped me, a chaotic symphony drowned out by the pounding of my heart, which echoed loudly in my ears. Then, the fall ceased abruptly, thrusting me onto solid ground. I stumbled to my feet, breathless and disoriented. The air was oppressively thick, a suffocating blanket of night that carried a faint metallic scent. The dim phosphorescent glow that had once enveloped me flickered like a dying star, casting long, grotesque shadows that danced sinisterly around. This was not the same cavern, the organic walls now twisted into sharp, jagged formations resembling the gnarled fingers of some unseen beast, awaiting my every move. As the initial terror receded, a haunting whisper clawed at the edges of my consciousness. "You have crossed the threshold," it sang. "Now, you must pay the price." Chilled, I scanned the area. Small openings punctuated the floor, seeping with thick black ooze that writhed unnaturally, pulsating like blood vessels. The echoes of faint cries drifted from the shadows as I crept closer to the source, my heart hammering against my ribs as the remnants of my courage faded. Suddenly, the ground beneath me trembled violently, shifting like a wounded beast stirring from a deep slumber. In a frenzied attempt to regain my balance, I lurched backward, colliding with something cold and slick. I turned to find myself face to face with a mirror, framed in bone, reflecting absolute darkness. As I leaned closer, I saw not my own reflection but fleeting glimpses of others, those twisted souls from the walls, their anguished faces contorting in agony. "Help us," one gasped, its voice a chilling whisper that seeped into the corners of my mind. The eyes that bore into me were inundated with desperation, shadows swirling like dark water beneath a stormy tide that I recoiled, stepping away from the mirror with a gasp. The very essence of those lost souls seemed to infuse the air around me, mingling with the smell of decay, evoking an unbearable longing to reach towards them. But I steadied myself, drawing the locket close again as if its warmth could shield me from their despair. In that instant, a low growl reverberated through the chamber, vibrating up from the earth itself, sending shockwaves through my bones. The shadows expanded, coalescing into a single dark mass that seemed to breathe, growing closer, shifting with an audible hunger. "Join us willingly, or we shall take you," echoed the chilling chorus, now saturated with an urgency that solidified into a malevolent intent. A shiver cascaded down my spine as the mass seemed to pulse with life, revealing grotesque faces emerging from the darkness, their mouths twisted into gaping mouths lined with endless rows of teeth. A radiant fear shot through me as I stumbled backward, scrambling to escape their tightening grip. The sharpness of bone-skinned stalagmites loomed overhead, casting jagged shadows that threatened to embrace me, squeezing my lungs until I could taste the metallic tang of panic on my tongue. Voices from every direction morphed into a cacophony of pleading and demands, shadows lunged for my ankles, fingers clawing at my clothes, the chill reaching into my very essence. "Flee, or stay." They chanted, their tone oscillating between deceptive offers and sinister threats. "Make your choice, or be forever lost." A sudden flash of insight struck me like lightning. The locket pulsed with warmth, shimmering in the murk. Could it channel the hope I had almost forsaken? What if I could summon enough light to combat this darkness? I rushed toward the mirror, heart pounding with resolve. As I thrust my hand into the reflected abyss, the surface shimmered like water disturbed by a tempest, and with a cry, I screamed, "I choose light. I choose remembrance." The ground shook violently, as surges of energy radiated from the locket, illuminating the dark with a blinding flash. The shadows reeled. From the depths of the mirror, the faces contorted, some in agony, some in relief as light penetrated their husks, but the terror was far from over. The growling intensified, and from the depths of the shadows, something began to emerge, a hulking figure shrouded in darkness, its size massive and imposing. Eyes, endless and unfathomable, locked onto mine, and I froze, the command of fear paralyzing my every instinct to flee. As it drew nearer, an unholy grin split its face, filled with rows of serrated teeth like the gleaming blades of a predator. "Light cannot save you, it only leads me to you," it hissed, a voice that resonated with the twisted hymns of the damned, and just as I thought the light would engulf us all, the cavern erupted with a heart-stopping roar. The ground shifted once again, an unforgiving upheaval that sent me sprawling to one side as the face of darkness lunged toward me, hungry for more than just my despair. With one last desperate breath, I launched the locket into the air, praying it would pierce through the veil of horror or shatter the darkness surrounding me. But as I watched it soar, I caught sight of something else behind the beast, the true keeper, lurking just beyond, a silhouette cloaked in secrets, its gaze locked onto me with chilling intent, as if the battle was only beginning. The shadows enveloped me, curling closer, drawing in their whispered secrets like a predator stalking its prey. The cavern pulsed with a sickening life of its own, the ground quaking with the weight of ancient anguish buried beneath layers of darkness. I was ensnared in the web of pain woven from countless lost souls, all sharing a heart-wrenching melody of despair that echoed against the living wall of the cave. Flickering memories danced at the edge of my consciousness, taunting me with indecipherable glimpses of who I had once been, and who I had failed to save. Then, just as despair threatened to consume me entirely, the locket, glowing with a flickering heartbeat of its own, fell into my hands. Its warmth surged and pulsed with life, a beacon amidst the suffocating dark. With a desperate resolve, I raised it above my head, hoping against hope that it would hold enough light to stave off the horror before me. But the shadows roared in disapproval, hissing through the air, constricting around my chest like a vice. "You dare challenge the keeper?" they shrieked, their voices weaving a terrible tapestry of accusation, each word, a thorn against my heart. "You will never escape what is yours." From the swirling black mass before me, a creature emerged, twisted, immense, and larger than a nightmare, a grotesque simulacrum of the depths below. I saw in it a reflection of myself, a projection of all that I feared. It hovered, a suffocating darkness throbbing with life as it bore down upon me. Before I could react, it lunged, a ghastly maw opening wide, teeth jagged like shards of broken glass. Time to sever the last tether. It bellowed, but I rolled aside, the air thick with malice and a scent of decay that mingled with my desperation. The locket flashed, and energy surged from within it, filling the chamber with incandescent light that tore through the suffocating shadows, illuminating the tortured faces that clawed from the walls. They cried out, voices weaving into a horrific choir, each shout a memory focused on me. "You turned away. You buried us with your neglect." The words raked against my consciousness, every syllable a dagger of guilt forcing its way deeper. No, I was afraid. I screamed, clutching the locket tightly in my palm, desperately summoning any remaining courage. "Please, have mercy," yet the keeper lingered, a ravaging darkness, swirling and shifting like the tide ready to engulf me. The shadows whispered venomously about my fears, each flicker reminding me of mistakes made, of love lost cruelly to indifference. I could feel their icy fingers wrapping around my wrists, urging me to surrender. Trembling, I shouted, "I release you," and hurled the locket forward, its brilliant light bursting through the air in a dazzling arc, illuminating the cavern like the first dawn after an eternal night. In a blinding flash, silence settled, it pierced the sinister embrace of the cave, forcing the specters to retreat momentarily, shrieking in horror. Their wails reverberated, giving rise to a core memoria moment long locked away, fleeting yet familiar. I recognized my childhood friend's face, a specter trapped within the shadows, her pleading eyes bore into me, "You must remember." Suddenly, everything came crashing down, the truth, my truth. For it was me who had left her behind, not just in that cave but in my life, all those years ago. I had chosen to walk away when she needed me most, abandoning her in her darkest hour. The weight of that long-buried guilt erupted within me, a dam breaking through the fabric of my soul. The memories rushed forward, forcing me to confront the pain that had shaped me, something I had long refused to face. As I faced the keeper, the embodiment of my darkest regrets, I felt the coldness of the shadows begin to unravel, losing strength as I steadied myself. "I won't let you take me," I declared fiercely, crying out at the mirage of my lost friend, who shimmered brightly in the radiant light of the locket. "I release you. I release all of you." The cavern quaked in response, shadows swirling violently, trying and failing to reclaim their hold. The atmosphere resonated with a sound like cracking glass, the remnants of old chains fraying. The howls of the damned grew more intense, a tornado of anguish and fury. Yet I stood firm, conscious of what I needed to do. With a newfound vigor, I stepped toward the keeper, holding the locket before me. "You are nothing but an echo of my past. You hold no power over me anymore." I raised the locket higher, the light illuminating the cavern in blinding glory. The keeper recoiled, a hideous shriek echoing against the walls as if the very darkness itself was being torn apart. But just then, the weight of the shadows pulled at my heart, the memories were relentless, disorienting. "You will choose the void," it whispered in a seductive tone, luring me back toward despair. A vision of my friend's doomed face appeared, just as I remembered it. "Pain, the accusation suffer with us." As everything spiraled down into darkness, I felt the tug of fear crawling up my throat. In a split second of clarity, faced with the abyss that beckoned, I remember my voice, the voice of freedom resonating deep within me. "No. I am more than my past. I am love, I am loss, I am all of my experiences. I carry them as my strength, not my burden. My voice echoed, growing stronger with my declaration as I took a firm stand against the overwhelming tide of despair, feeling the ancestral ties of regret loosen their grip. At that moment, the locket's glow exploded, sending a shockwave throughout the cave, rending the shadows in twain. The keeper howled, a ghastly bark of fury, pushed back by its own shadows, collapsing beneath the relentless purity of what I had chosen to reveal. In an instant, I was engulfed in blinding light, every whispering shadow cast aside as the darkness began to disintegrate, all the lost souls illuminating one final time before dissipating, freed from their chains, and then, as the brilliance faded, I opened my eyes, disoriented but unharmed, splayed on the ground at the mouth of the cave. Dawn broke, illuminating the contaminated air, washing over me as warmth seeped into my trembling limbs. Yet despite my victory, an unsettling realization settled in. The aching souls still lingered, their presence echoing in the corners of my heart. I rose to my feet, glancing reluctantly back into the cave. Had I truly freed them, or were they merely waiting, biding their time as it lay hidden within? As the wind whipped around me, the chilling whispers returned to taunt me, laden with malevolence and the taste of sorrow, a reminder that while the keeper might have been bested, the darkness was still lurking, waiting for its chance to reclaim me. And as I stepped away, a final whisper lingered on the breeze, hauntingly resonant with dread: you may have escaped, but the keeper lives on, and so does the shadow that now dwells within you.